my brain kind of like exploded, as you do when you're too high. It made me think this thought. I was like, maybe every action that I take is the most important thing I will ever do. Hi, welcome to Inner Archaeology. I'm Emily.
And I'm Sarah. And we're going to be talking about Stutz's tools.
Yeah, this is a continuation.
Is
a continuation of last week's conversation where we were reflecting on the documentary Stutz that was recently released on Netflix, which follows the tools and modalities developed by Jonah Hill's therapist. His last name is Stutz. I think his first name's Phil, but I don't know for sure. He seems like a Phil to me. Anyway.
Yeah.
So one of the ones that we mentioned last week that I would love to unpack a little with you is this string of pearls idea, which is interesting. And I love how visual all these tools are. And actually, one of the really beautiful components, I think, of the work that Stutz does is that he creates these little drawings, these little note cards that he gives to all of his like clients, where they're like these just little visual representations of these tools. And I think it's just such a beautiful, and it's done in his, and he has Parkinson's. So it's very shaky, all the lines, and they create these like really beautiful, almost abstract looking drawings, and the amount of like focus and intent that it takes somebody with Parkinson's to do these drawings and all these writings, and that it's almost like this like labor of love, which seems really beautiful. Anyway, that was just this like element of his work that I thought was like really special, and having visual components is incredibly powerful, you know, to like making an abstract concept more tangible in somebody's mind. Mm-hmm. So String of Pearls, this was another one where he drew a line with a circle, and then in each circle, in each pearl, there was a little black dot. And it which he called the turd, which I thought was so funny.
Yeah.
But each pearl represents just the next action you take in your life, whether it's getting out of bed or whether it's launching $1 million business. That each pearl holds equal value and weight, that there's not one that's more important than the other, which I thought was super powerful, because we tend to value certain actions over other actions. And when you reduce it down to, I am the person who just puts the next pearl on the string of my life, and that each pearl contains a turd, like there's nothing perfect about any of the action that I make, which is something that you say, which is so brilliant, which is take imperfect action. That if you're waiting around for the perfect pearl to put on that string, you're never going to add more pearls to your string, essentially, using this analogy. And it's such a powerful concept because that keeps people so stuck. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I think, again, like what you said about how it was like, it was all these different actions or whatever, but how they all carried the same weight. Like, I don't know. I really loved that idea too, because again, we really do value like certain actions over others. But I know that in my life, there have been days where like getting up and brushing my teeth and taking a shower probably carried more weight than some of the like business needle moving stuff that I do these days. You know what I mean? And so, I don't know. I think it was like a really honest reminder that is something that we often forget because we do value certain things over others. Yeah. And I think, honestly, like at different points in your life too, even like
that shifts
all
and
the
changes,
little actions, like some will be harder and easier. Yeah. And I also really just love how, I don't know, and all of his tools that he had, like they were meaningful, but they weren't necessarily like eloquent. Like they always had this like underlying
crudeness to them,
theme of like of like just keeping it real, like, you
Yeah.
know, and he's like, and you have a string of pearls, and each pearl has a turd.
Turd
You know
in
what I
it.
mean?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, you could have called that like an imperfection, you know, to
Right.
keep with the like, he's like,
Yeah.
no, it's actual shit on the
Just
pearl.
shit. Yeah.
Just shit
Mhm.
on the pearl, in the
Mhm.
pearl. And
Mhm.
I don't know, that made me laugh too, because it was
Mhm.
like, he just like wasn't so hung up on his metaphors and his like ideas that he needed them to be. I don't know, because of it, it made like it was also real, and so it was just
Mm.
like practical and tangible, and I don't know, I liked Stutz.
Yeah, I know. I agree. It was very palatable. Like you could digest it really easily because it wasn't trying to impress you in some way.
Yes,
It was just
that's
being what it
it.
is.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah,
He just was
totally.
like, I just want to help people, and this is my like little like these are
In
my
its
tools.
simple, yeah, in its simple expression of this tool because it's for you like to apply. And I love this one in particular because I do think that if you were to assign every action with equal value in your life, I think it would remove a
Mm-hmm.
ton of self-judgment, because we tend to, at the end of our days, evaluate our day and be like, I'm a shit human or whatever, because like I didn't value the things that I was doing, when in fact that just getting out of bed and drinking water and doing those things were the things that you needed to do that day to move your plot line forward so that in the future 5 years or 7 years, you could have your big successful business. But these were necessary. So it's about like moving the storyline forward. Like this
Mm-hmm.
is the next frame, and you have to be
Mm-hmm.
you can't have your future pearls without these ones. Like these ones have to go next. And I actually like, it makes me think of, I hope I'm going to be able to do this judgment. I had an experience where I was very, very high after eating a weed cookie. I didn't know how much weed was in it. So mystery weed cookie. And I watched that Tom Cruise movie, Edge of Tomorrow, which is about
Oh,
how
I've
they
never
like,
seen it.
okay, well, essentially it's like aliens on the planet, but they have this ability to reset the day. Like every time he dies, that same day resets. And
Is it
so
End of Tomorrow?
Edge of Tomorrow. Edge.
Okay. Okay.
Edge of Tomorrow. There's all sorts of movies
Okay.
that have very similar titles. There's one like where it's like frozen, everything's frozen. Anyways, this
Okay.
one, Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt is in this one. Anyway, so the movie kind of shows they like land on the beach. It's this big battle, and he gets so far and then gets killed and the day resets, and then he gets like a little bit farther and gets killed and the day resets, and he gets a little bit farther in
Oh
this battle
shit.
and it resets, and it eventually starts showing the film in just like the present, but you are, it is implied that he's just resetting over and over and over and over again. And in my very like stoned sense of reality at the time, I was like, oh my god, is this how time works? Because I was like, every single moment he was living like was the most important critical choice and decision, because it was like he had to step left at this time in order to get so the alien doesn't kill, like everything was like coordinated. And it just made me think about, I had this like my brain kind of like exploded, as you do when you're too high, but it made me think this thought. I was like, maybe every action that I take is the most important thing I will ever do, because it is moving my storyline forward. And
Mm.
maybe there's some version of like my consciousness has tried this a million times, and like if I just like trust myself and I'm in tune that this is like the next step to take, and I just take that step, then maybe that is exactly what is right for me. This is a very high thought to try to communicate.
No, I think there's like some real truth to this, because it's like another version of something that I really believe, which is that, you know, and comes from that book, The Slight Edge, which I love and I always talk about way too much. But, you know, he talks about how the little actions like add up. And so oftentimes someone will be like, you could be like, I'm going to drink this like can of Coke. And we all know it's like not good for you, highly addictive. And you're like, okay, it's just the can of Coke this one time, like in BD. But like if you always tell yourself every time that that small action isn't a big deal because it's just like, oh, this can of Coke one time, like that adds up. You gain weight, you like your health declines, right? And he's like, but that's because those little individual actions are actually super, super important. And then he talks about, and also you can like feel it because it's like when you hear people talk like this, it's like it can be kind of intimidating, right? You're like, oh, sorry, I have to adjust. I'm so pregnant.
So pregnant.
I'm like just
Heave
like
ho.
fucking heaving myself around trying to like catch my breath.
Talking's hard. Sitting's hard.
Talking is so hard.
Oh my God, I love
Talking.
you.
I'm just like so out of breath all the time.
I know.
Anyway, it makes those actions like if somebody says to you, okay, but all those actions are actually now very, very important, right? They're all super important.
Mm-hmm.
Every action you take, that can be really scary if you let it be, right? Because you're like, fuck. Like, then you can just like use it to like beat yourself up for literally like every action that you take, right? You can be like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit. I'm a piece of shit. I didn't do the right thing. Or you can realize that's a fucking relief because I just have to take small right actions. Like it's like literally that simple. It's like it's not drinking the can of soda. It's like eating lunch. It's drinking the glass of water. It's like all that little shit, which to me is a relief because it's all doable. It's not like some secret magic like
Huge thing you have
jumping
to do.
off a cliff,
Yes,
like
yes.
massive leap of faith. It's just like sending that email, eating that healthy meal, like, and just continuing to choose that one over the other one every time. Not every time, but like more times than not, really. And it all adds up. And so I don't know. Yes, I really loved the concept of all of that and creating. Yeah. Go ahead.
There is this like it can kind of like I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can like articulate how it like unfolds even more because it's almost I guess going back to your Coke analogy, every single Coke that you drank was a pearl on the string until you drank the Coke that you were like I need to not drink Coke as much. But you needed all of those other ones to get you to this action that then propelled change in your life. And I think that there's a lot of relief that you were talking about there in it's almost like if these even small actions carry as much weight as the big one, the big quote unquote jumping off a cliff or launching into something that's feels more dynamic or big, if they're all equally important, kind of reiterating what you were saying, that can feel heavy and really overwhelming. Like, oh my God, that's too much. But if they also are equally as important, then there's kind of a sense of like, and don't get me wrong when I say this is in a good way. And this is like a snake eating its tail. It like comes first full circle. If everything is so meaningful at all times because it's moving the plot line forward, it's also simultaneously meaningless because it all carries the same weight. So it's like, it all becomes really neutral in this way of like, just like you're fucking alive. I don't know. And you're like doing the next moment. And I remember
it's so true.
I remember when I was standing on my deck after watching this movie, it's still in my weed high, and this thought came to me, and I was like, and I was coming out of a lifetime of assigning so much meaning to so much stuff, and then also like punishing myself for like when I'm not in alignment with this, like the concept of like only putting the important pearls on and all these other ones are so unimportant, right? And when I came to this idea of like all the pearls have equal value, I wasn't using that analogy, but that it was all kind of like there was a neutrality there. It was all so meaningful, quote unquote, it was meaningless. I felt it was like the weight of the world just like lifted off my shoulders. And I was like, it was like for the first time in my life, I gave myself permission to just live my life, to not like, to just do the next right thing for me, you know? And that's it. That's my only job, is to do the next right thing. And to also trust that I'm going to receive guidance, right? I guess to refer back to like the life force stuff we were talking about last week around, and maybe I have to drink 1,000 Cokes before I drink the Coke that's like, this is the last Coke. Like maybe it takes me that long. I get to decide that, you know, but like trusting that there always is opportunity, I think, with every pearl that you put on your string to grow and to be more realized version of yourself and to be like bigger, better. I don't know, like whatever it is that's right for you. And yeah, that's
No, 100%. And it's like, I love that. It's like if everything is of equal meaning, then it's really meaningful and at the same time meaningless. Like,
and that's not in a nihilistic way. That's in a very connected, it's in a very like dense, confusing, yes, think about it. Chew on this thought when you're high next. It'll help.
Wait, so what are some of the other tools? Because there's something in here that I'm not remembering, but that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
And I'm like, there's something else there. Dig through your notes.
Well, he talked about part X, which is interestingly enough.
I want to talk about part X.
Okay, let's talk about part X.
And how it's different from the shadow. I wanted to read that paper. They glanced to a paper.
Yeah,
I know. They did like a shot.
I had the same thought.
Yeah. I was like, I need that paper.
I had the same thought. The distinction.
It was like how part X is different from the shadow. This is what I wanted to. Okay. I was like, there's something missing. Tell me about part X. I forget. Okay. Honestly,
I will write. So part X is interesting because like how he described part X is a very judgmental part of you that keeps you small, which is I define as like the manager or the negative expression of the inner parent. So in the work that I do, that's what part X is, but it's kind of part X is like badass sounding. You can't get rid of it. It's a voice of impossibility. These are like quotes. And actually that the negativity of part X is what propels you into growth, which is a very interesting thought. So that was what I wrote about part X. There was this quote that I'm just going to read because it was so great in that section where Stutz said the highest creative expression for a human being is to be able to create something new right in the face of adversity. So it was about like doing it anyways, even though part X is like there like shitting on you all the time or whatever.
Dude, this is so true. I think this is like fucking big truth with a capital T. Like, I love that that's the quote. That's what I was trying to tell you about. Yeah. Well, that was the quote I was trying to tell you about like 2 weeks ago when I was like, I can't wait for you to watch it because I feel like you just went through like a massive period of your life where you did this, where like when you create in the face of adversity, there's just like almost nothing more powerful and empowering, nothing more empowering than that. Yeah. Like I just like, and that's like, I mean, it makes sense. Those are all the stories we want to hear. It's like literally what all movies are about. I feel like
overcoming
all good movies.
The hero overcoming conflict and like, transforming. Yeah.
And like still doing good things, having positive change, growing, creating something gorgeous with like all the odds against them. Yeah. Like that's the shit we like love. We love it. It's like we're wired for that shit. Yeah. I love it so much. I know that was like the quote I was like so excited for you to get to.
Yeah, I'm glad that was your
last year.
It definitely stood out really dynamically. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you like, yeah, I did that. Did it make you want to like stand on a rock and like hold a sword in the air?
Yeah, I mean now I do. I didn't really think about it then, but yeah. Hold a sword. Does somebody have a sword I can have?
Dude, I think you need a sword. I'm getting you a sword.
Oh my god, can it be made out of like rose quartz or something?
Yeah. Well, I've shown you like a big dream of mine is to recreate the Grimes music video.
Oh my god, yeah, where they're thrashing around on the beach with weapons.
They're in the desert. They're in the desert with like warrior, and they're like in a hanging off of an Escalade with the medieval like thing that swings around with the ball, spiky ball thing, and the like fucking swords and stuff, and they're just like, and I was just like, I just want to do that with all my girlfriends. I want to like put on these fucking like mirror bras, these spiky tit Madonna mirror bras, and braid our hair into like pink braids to the floor. Anyway, massive tangent, but
and
that's
thrash around in the desert. Yes, no, we need to do that. That would be a good expression of
Genesis. The song is called Genesis.
Okay,
If you've
there you
never
go.
seen that music video,
Go watch it. Do yourself a
checking
favor.
out. Anyway,
so
back to you creating something powerful in the face of adversity. Yeah, I don't know. I just think that's like, I think that's when we're like our most alive.
And honestly, I think that there's I think the things worth creating are created in the face of adversity. Like the big things, like they're not, you have to fight for it. It doesn't always, especially I think in the beginning, the ease comes. I think the ease comes, not that adversity is not there, but that you trust yourself to do it anyways. I think that's what the ease is. It's like there's this sense of like,
or you have like, you feel like almost like you have nothing to lose. Like you're like, fucking, this is so intense and so shitty. I have to do this thing. Like I have to. It just kind of is like, yeah.
It was a necessity. And I was definitely there. It was like, there was not really other options. I just had to move forward, but yeah, so part X was this idea that we were talking about, which is, I think, your manager part. Like that's how we talk about it. It's the very judgmental part. I do believe Stutz didn't get it. Not that I'm going to be like my like, but I'm going to say it. I do believe you can like reframe your relationship with part X though. I don't think it always has to be that like abrasive to you. I think it can be very informative, but it also can like move into, I think its accurate role is a role of the protector, like the inner parent is it's like the healed expression of quote unquote part X. But then he talked about the shadow and how the shadow was distinct. The shadow is the part that you're ashamed of, right?
That one made me burst into tears.
Yeah.
He was like, we all have a shadow, and it's the part of us that like, I'm not anymore, thank God. But it's like the part of you that for most of your life you were most ashamed of. And then like loving that part of you. And like, and I just like boo-hooed. I was like,
yeah.
And I was like, what? I was like, just thinking about my shadow.
Yeah. And how much you love your shadow. Yes.
I was like, my little shadow.
They did an exercise in the documentary where Stutz asked Jonah Hill to envision his shadow, and they actually brought out like a cardboard cutout of Jonah's shadow, which was like a 14-year-old version of him. This is also like inner child work, honestly, but like, and what he did is he asked Jonah to have a conversation with his shadow, where he said, ask your shadow how he feels about how you've treated him. And
yes.
Yeah. And then the thing that he said, which is the shit that we talk about all the time, is that your shadows, which are manifest in triggers, right? All they want are attention. They just want attention from you. Yeah.
They just want to be acknowledged and be like, yeah, that was fucking hard, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's this whole like,
I know that part too got me right in the heart. I was like,
yeah, it's so good because there's something about looking at your own shadow and fucking apologizing to it for how you've treated that part of you. That is so incredibly healing. It creates a wholeness, a sense of wholeness that you didn't know was possible because you've become so accustomed to existing in this like exiled, divided reality where you are unwilling to acknowledge your shadow and these past versions of you that you have shame around. And when you look at them and you say, I'm sorry for ignoring you, for shaming you, for hating you, and like what can I do to make this better, and because I've had conversations like this with my shadow, and almost every time it's like, stop just like stop telling me to shut up, make space for me to be there, like tell me it's okay that I exist.
Wait, can you make a meditation that like identifies your shadow and has a conversation with your shadow?
Yeah. I mean,
and put it on Patreon. I
Uh,
just feel like you'd be so good at this. I feel like you've
mhm.
done similar stuff.
I've done similar stuff. It's definitely been formulated in the context of inner child work, but I could do a shadow thing. Actually, the first time I encountered shadow work, I was reading a book. Oh no, what is it called?
Was it Toby? I'm
Mm,
just making fun of myself because she always talks about shadow work, and I thought
no,
that her name was Toby, but it's
it's
Toby.
like a really Toby. No, it's not Toby. That's hilarious. I actually didn't know what you were talking about. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Um
You know what I'm talking about now, right? To Be
yeah, it's too
Magnetic,
big
that
magnetic.
chick.
Yeah.
And I thought her name was Toby for like years.
Yeah.
I was like,
That was
Toby
funny.
Magnetic.
What it's like the OG shadow work book. What the fuck is it? Oh my god. Okay, well, whatever. I can't remember it. I'll put it in the notes
It'll
if I
come
could
to you.
remember
You
it.
can put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll put it in the
Yeah.
show notes when it comes to me. But anyway, the first time I encountered my shadow, and I'd never really like heard of, like, I think maybe it was To Be Magnetic that first kind of introduced me to the concept, and then I read this book, and I saw my shadow for the first time, and it scared the fuck out of me. Like, it actually, so much so that I put that book away. I didn't read that book. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to talk about it. It was like very, very scary to like encounter the part of me that I hid away in shame. And honestly, when I was started, and I don't know, I guess I don't know like what information is out there on like distinction between shadow work and inner child work, but I feel like there's a lot of crossover, because when I view my shadow
Mm-hmm.
as my inner child, there, I don't have that same fear and repulsion. I actually have like so much more compassion for my little child self. It's when I view my shadow as like myself today, or a version of
But
myself
I
today,
think
that
so.
there's
I
almost like
think,
fear around it.
but like my shadow's not my child is not a child.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's like 20-year-old me,
Mm-hmm.
25. So I think maybe that's why there's a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
And like
did have
Jonah's
that
wasn't like
thought.
it's not like
I mean, Jonas,
is
he's like
that I don't know. I'm just
14.
saying like me
Yeah.
like my shadow because there's nothing I did as for me. There's nothing I did as a child that I'm like deeply ashamed of. It came much later in life. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I just wonder if it's like if it's that. I
No,
don't know.
that absolutely makes sense. And I wonder if there's, cuz, and this is all, I literally, like, I finished the documentary this morning, and I'm like still like chewing on this a lot, but because that's what I'm wondering is like, what is the correlation between shadow work and inner child work, and how does incorporating them together create more love and compassion in there? And maybe it's just my own aversion to my own shadow, which is making me want to find like an easier route, honestly, or
Or
something like
maybe
that.
well it's just like we all have word choices that we prefer
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you just it's like a preference like you don't like the shadow preference. The reason I like the word shadow is because it really taps into the idea that like when you keep some which I have found to be true time and time again is that when you keep something in the dark it's so much more scary. And so for
Yeah.
me it's like the shadow is inherently dark, it's a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and as soon as you can like pull it into the light, like it's no longer a
Yeah.
shadow. Do you
No,
know? So that for
I
me,
actually
that's
love
why I
the term
like that
shadow.
imagery.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Oh,
actually
oh, oh,
really
okay.
no, I really love the term shadow. I think I'm just like really clumsily like trying to work out thoughts that aren't formed, because I think that your conscious awareness is acts as light. And when you bring your conscious awareness onto your
Mm-hmm.
shadow, you get to see it. And then I think when you see and remember those drawings that's in our course, our Master
Master
Your
your
Mindset
mindset.
course, because when you
Mm-hmm.
first see your shadow, it looks kind of like a monster, and then when you look at it closer, I wonder if it's just like layers of your shadow. I'm still trying to figure out this like inner child piece. I wonder if it's like layers, because when you think of like the version of you that you're so ashamed of, right, whether or
Uh-huh.
not you're a child, how, it doesn't matter what age you are. But then when you look into like, why were those behaviors there? Like, why did that happen? That like will go into like inner child work. That will go into pain that you experienced as a child that then
Mm-hmm.
resulted down the road in behavior or whatever that then became the parts of you that you're ashamed of. Maybe that's the thread. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna
I
chew
want
on
that
it more.
paper.
I want that
find
paper.
the paper of part X in the shadow.
Yeah, this was so good. It was really fun to hear somebody else's like thematic tools and ideas, and I couldn't help but bounce off my own tools and ideas that I've developed, and like see the things that like were similar and the things that were different, and that's what I love so much about people who are kind of like unconventionally and creatively developing tools to like help people with their minds and their relationship with their self, because it's going to speak to the right people, right? Like I really believe that deep down. And we need that diversity and the creativity, because I believe that my tools are going to speak to the right people. Stutz's tools are going to speak to the right people. And I think that
they're probably going to pull like bits and pieces from each, you just have something that resonates with you.
Absolutely. There's overlapping themes and connections, and different people have their different focuses. But I guess this kind of goes back to like where we even started last episode, is like I so appreciate the creative element and the kind of going off book and off the beaten path of what is typically considered like therapeutic work, I guess. It was really beautiful and refreshing. So I liked unpacking some of these things with you.
Yeah, it was good. I knew it was going to be a fun one. Well, until next time, guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks for tuning in. We do love you, and we will see you next time.
Bye.